Welcome to the Thanksgiving edition of the SoccerWire Podcast. I'm Marc Serber, and I'm thankful for all of our listeners. I'm also thankful for our extraordinary producer/editor, Bridget Baker, and the guys beside me, SoccerWire founder Chris Hummer and managing editor Quinn Casteel. And guys, seeing as this is the week that we give thanks by just stuffing ourselves with food, we're going to continue with the food theme and talk about the alphabet soup that is the millions, it seems, leagues of youth soccer all blending together, and whether or not this is good for the game or whether it's diluting the game for our young players.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Alphabet soup, millions of them, please no. But it feels like it could get there. And you know, what we mean by this is that for those of you that had kids that were in soccer 10 years ago, 12 years ago, pre-DA, let's just call it, a little bit longer than that, pre-U.S. club soccer. We talked about this on 2 or 3 weeks ago as well, about how it has changed the options for players and clubs and to play in different leagues. And there used to only be one league in every big market.
Well, let me tell you, like when I grew up, and God knows I'm aging myself here, but there was basically in the Washington, D.C. area, there was the rec league, which for me was MSI, Montgomery Soccer. That was your rec. Then you had the MSI Classic. And then you had National Capital Soccer League, which was travel. And that was the 3 leagues we had. And now I feel like teams in Maryland can play in 5 or 6 different leagues today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I didn't grow up here, but I coached in it in that time, a little bit older than you. Taking it on the Virginia side of D.C., you have the rec league is Suburban Friendship League, which is recreational, but you still travel to play other clubs. So that's still in place. But then you had ODSL, Old Dominion Soccer League. Then above that you had NCSL or WAGs. And even as early as at some point, WAGs and NCSL didn't even start until U11 or U12 because they didn't want 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds to have to travel outside of their local market for soccer games. And then slowly they moved that down to U9. ODSL is still there. MSI Classic is still there. But then, the whole wave started. U.S. club soccer was in a lot of ways a godsend for people that work in club soccer and for a lot of parents. And the genesis of this, of parents who volunteered as what's called registrars for their clubs. The genesis of this was, I remember a time when there was only one game in town, and you had to have 8-year-old kids sign a player card in black ink, and you had to drive that to somebody's house porch, put it in one of those milk crates with original copies of birth certificates of your child, and leave it on their porch and drive away and hope you got it back. And they enforced it. If it was written in blue ink, they rejected it. If it was so that frustration is what led to the birth of a U.S. club soccer that went with a national player registration system and a streamlined administrative system. And that was kind of the genesis for a lot of this. And then we all know about the start of the DA, and ECNL was sort of that U.S. club soccer on steroids approach to nationalizing a good competition platform, also born out of frustration with the showcase tournament market that was – you would have 3 teams from one city go to a whole other city on an airplane and play each other. And there's nothing that they would do about it. And the club directors of coaching were getting really frustrated. So they came together and they said, you know what, guys, let's make a national league ourselves, play regionally and then nationally on our own. And that then diluted the platform of teams. And then in the markets, you started getting other leagues that were starting up because they had the same frustrations, or that they also wanted to try and capture some of that ECNL style of a league where you weren't relegated out or kicked out of one age group or another, to where the entire club was a member, and you would get, say, 10 clubs, and every season there was a team in each age group from each of those 10 clubs. And no matter how good those teams were. And the idea was if you stuck with that for a few years and it was the alternative option, that these clubs would be able to retain players and attract more players and develop more players. It's just a nice positive up spiral of a system. So, that hasn't happened. And that's my big frustration with the whole thing is now you have, if you're not DA or not ECNL, pick your market, and you've got multiple leagues that have 2 or 3 really good teams that are playing in the same age and gender, that are playing in one league, and 2 or 3 really good ones in another league, and possibly even 2 or 3 ones in another league. And so those teams are playing 2 or 3 competitive games per season with each other, and then they have blowouts. What's the point? At least those 12 teams or 6 teams should all be playing each other.
And then, of course, we talked about what it does a few weeks ago and the fact that we go into like state cups and national champions, and are those really the best teams in the state? Are they really the best team in the nation? So that brings up that whole thing, and then it became a thing of leagues against league. Our league is better. No, our league is best. Talk to this kid. No, you want to play in the Premier League. That's our league. No, that's our league. Quinn, what do you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, directions we can go with this topic, but yeah, the alphabet soup, it's something people talk about a lot, between U.S. club soccer, U.S. youth soccer, ECNL, boys ECNL, DA, and all that. It's really getting, I don't want to say out of control. It's not to say that one specific league is bad, but everybody can recognize it when you zoom out. There's not a single regional league in the country that is necessarily doing anything for the wrong reason. But once you zoom out and you start to look at how many leagues are just popping up left and right, everybody does recognize that it's a problem with how just convoluted the youth soccer landscape is. And so I think that, the main thing that people are, referring to when they complain about the landscape getting out of hand are really a couple different things. Is number one, just in general, the pay-to-play model, obviously, and how expensive it is between traveling, league fees, tournaments, and just, the total cost is getting really out of control. I've seen some astronomical numbers as far as how much parents are having to pay yearly just to play in youth soccer, have their kids play in youth soccer. Also, you have the problem of just travel and just the amount of time that people are spending in the car, on planes, etc. And then also, I think the other thing that I'm noticing a lot is that with the word elite and premier and words like that being thrown around so much, is I think a lot of parents don't actually know where their club or the team that their kid plays for actually falls in the soccer landscape. They, if they're hearing, oh, we're in the elite premier development, something or other league, when we just won the national premier championship, just being generic with these names that get used so often, they might actually think that their kid's team is close to the best or the best in the country, when that just isn't the case. I mean, so I think that, part of what needs to happen to help solve the issue is for more parents to understand the real youth soccer landscape and the player development pyramid and where their kid and their kid's team fits in it, because it's a follow the money situation where parents are the ones at the end of the day paying for all of these leagues and tournaments and all the alphabet soup. And so if the parents, I think that if more parents understood the full landscape the same way that, because they're busy and they don't necessarily have time to memorize all this stuff about youth soccer. And so, I think if more parents understood that, they might be willing to say no, or, we need to find a local option because this just isn't worth this massive time and financial investment.
So, yeah, Quinn, I mean, definitely the parents, educating parents would help, but just like educated voters can help with big issues, where this is coming from the clubs, though, in a lot of ways. And when you start out in your soccer career in your town, you sign up for the club that's right next door, the one that you drive by, and so forth. And I think a lot of this gets set in early. If it's a club that isn't already in one of these leagues, and again, the DA EC are now starting to operate in these clubs as the A teams, and they have B teams. They have C, and you could be at a really big club where they actually have 6 or 7 travel teams that can each play in one of these leagues. So that's there. It might be an ideal situation to really understand the pecking order. What team you play for as a parent, especially at the younger ages, isn't as important if you think you have a special player, then where are they going to develop the most? And that's what frustrates me is if it's about playing team soccer and the generic standard, well, of course, benefits of kids playing sports, they get a new group of friends outside of their school, they get better exercise, they get to learn about teamwork, all these things about that sports do for kids, which is no matter what the sport, that's all great. Then enjoy yourself. Enjoy the fact that 5 or 6 times a season, if you get to win an easy game 6-0, and go get ice cream afterwards and enjoy it. But if you really want to develop players, which is what we kind of where we focus on SoccerWire a lot of helping to educate and expose, is you have, and this is why ECNL started, you have to play competitive, meaningful games. And you have to have a process to where you spend 3 or 4 training sessions preparing for a specific game and going through that cycle, because that's how the elite level works. And by having 3 leagues that have 2 teams in each age group that are really good, when you could have 1 league that have 6, the argument we talked about last week or 2 weeks ago about State Cup winners, the non-ECNL or non-DA teams in those State Cups would be even better. They would beat more of those teams because they would have spent these years competing for starting positions and where every game was meaningful. And that's the frustrating part for me as a coach.
I think what frustrates me the most is that the majority of the problems for me aren't necessarily about the alphabet soup as much as they are about the fighting between leagues and jockeying for position between leagues, and then the fighting between the clubs. Like you said, I think, like I said earlier a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, the more places players have a chance to play, the better. If everybody wants to play soccer and there's a place for them, that is wonderful. But for me, it's kind of like know your role. I love what they're doing down in Richmond. I think it was Arlington actually, where the coach said, look, I made DA not because I want to funnel up my best players, but because I want everybody to be able to choose the path that they want to go down. So for the players that really want to be developed, they have DA. For the players that want to play at a high level but don't necessarily want to have that commitment, or being a pro isn't their goal, they still have other travel. So like you said, the clubs that have teams in different leagues, I really like. But it's when one league starts battling with another for supremacy, or when one club gets really upset that a DA club is taking one of their players. And this is going to sound harsh, but know your role. Know where you are in the soccer landscape and then embrace it. And we won't have these kind of problems. I mean, look at USL. They decided that they weren't going to try and say we're better than MLS or we're bigger than MLS. They said, you know what? We're D2. And not only are we going to go with that and we're going to expand, but we're going to help MLS by giving their reserve players a place to play and giving them a bridge for the players in the development academy and those guys on the edge of the first team, but we're missing out on first team minutes, a place where they could play 34 games in a season. By USL doing that, they not only helped the entirety of soccer in the country, but they helped make Major League Soccer better. One thing that DC United's academy does so well here, and they do a great job with Tony Annan in Atlanta as well, is they built a relationship with the clubs in the leagues below them, so that these clubs not only respect Atlanta United, expect DC United, but they are proud when their players move from their club to Atlanta United or to DC United. They're not fighting and saying, you're taking away our chance to win a national title. They're saying, look what we did to help these players go through. Now, I'm not going to name leagues, but I've called matches in one national championship and then went to another national championship. The second national championship was abysmal. And so it was really unfair to me that people are saying, oh, no, well, we're the premier and that's what we're sticking by. I think that if clubs and leagues just understood where they are in the landscape, what they stand for, and how they can best serve the player that is there at the time, then we're not going to run into these problems. But of course, at the end of the day, money talks.
So, Mark, that's a great way, I think, to sum it up. And so I want to just take that point and run with it. While you were talking, I was just picturing in my head a pyramid. Just everybody talks about the player development pyramid. Obviously, you have the top, which is the truly elite. In the youth game, it's the youth national teams, and the DA and the ECNL are kind of right below that, or along with that. But then you get wider, and then you have kind of the highest levels of the next level of travel with some U.S. youth soccer leagues like the National League and U.S. club soccer leagues with the NPLs. And then you kind of get below that and you get this wider part of the pyramid, which I guess you would say the bottom of the pyramid is rec and to some degree high school in some parts. So I think that this conversation right now is kind of focusing on that lower, wider part of the pyramid, which is below truly elite travel and above rec. And there's this middle tier, which is a big chunk of that pyramid, which is travel soccer, which is very expensive, pay to play travel soccer with a lot of travel, more and more these days, and some degree of, I don't want to make it a nefarious thing, but, varying degrees of, I guess, eliteness. There's a lot of people claiming certain leagues and organizations are elite when, like you said, they may not be, taking full inventory and embracing where they're at in the pyramid. And I think a lot of parents don't understand that because they, might buy into some marketing. And I think that is kind of the problem area that so many people complain about. That is really kind of the heart of this alphabet soup youth soccer issue.
Well, Mark, and you touched on it too, Quinn. The know your role part.
And that's not easy.
Yeah,
it's not
right.
easy at all. I understand that it's not easy.
There's a lot of, at every level. There's so much. We all have it. It's in human nature, have an ego, and want to think that we're a part of. We've made a right decision. There's all those comments about after you read more of the reviews and the articles about the car that you just bought than you do before you buy the car. There's a confirmation bias or something it's called. So this is why we're trying to do better with SoccerWire, why we launched this podcast. I've tried to whiteboard the structure of pathways, and it's really, really hard to explain even to coaches that are earning a paycheck in the game where everything fits. And when you get that added benefit of the added effect of coaches and people making decisions about where clubs play or what clubs get started, and if they have a chip on their shoulder at all, decisions start to get made about what they can keep if they have a strong team or the way that they think the rules should run. And it's that age-old, if I don't get my way, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. It's that capitalistic society or economy type of a system where you're free to start your own business if you don't like the way the other businesses are being run.
NASL.
And that's another. I don't want to go too deep into it because of our listeners are more youth level, but NASL made a mission statement that was somewhere along the lines of we can be better than MLS, and look what happened to them. So I think what's really lacking in all of this, what I have dreamed about is and my friends in the UK say, don't be careful what you wish for, because it's actually becoming more Americanized. But the top level leadership, there's no clear leadership about the actual best pathway, and because we're in a country that you can you can start an organization and give yourself a brand name and rent fields or build fields or get fields from your county and start your own teams and enter a league. You can't ever stop the dilution of all of that stuff when there's ambitious funded people that really have a lot of time that they want to work on something. But the federation, or maybe the dream scenario, is an MLS/USL only development academy, top league that is free and regionalizes itself. Imagine if U.S. Soccer created. We should have Anson Durant on it, because this is one of the things he talked about back when he was a national team coach and won the first World Cup with the women, was he wanted U.S. Soccer to have 4 national teams. He wanted there to be, they have these traditional 4 regions and only funnel up in your geography into those 4 regions. If somebody would have a great idea like that, and there'd be real leadership from U.S. Soccer, which is difficult because the people in power at U.S. Soccer get voted on by the members, who are the 55 youth soccer state associations and all their other members. But some kind of leadership about this is the pathway for the best players, period, and then it gets worked out in the marketplaces where it's clear the best players are playing in that league. That would help.
Yeah, and you mentioned the marketplace, which allows, people to come together and create leagues, like you said, if they think they can do it better. And to that point, I think, the free market works pretty well. The ECNL is kind of an example of that, and a lot of people would agree that the ECNL has been a total smash hit. They're a fantastic, very high quality league, probably the best, the first in the original
side.
Yeah, the first in the original girls. Yeah, yes, I'm referring to the girls side. They're basically the first and original elite girls national league, and so far even U.S. Soccer hasn't been able to knock them off.
That's the issue, right? Why do we even need to be trying to knock each other?
Well, why does the federation have leagues at all?
Well, here's the thing: is that I don't know. That's a whole nother show. The federation is a whole nother show. But
Christmas episode.
The same marketplace that allows the ECNL to create and become this fantastic smashing success is also the same, conversely, the same market forces are creating this conversation about pay to play and low-level travel soccer, where I think there are going to be organizations, there already is consolidation. It's on the horizon. I think there's youth soccer consolidation is on the horizon, because I think that zeroing in even more, I think the part of the heart of this conversation right now is, hey, which of these travel, leagues and organizations have become or on the track to just being basically glorified, really, really expensive rec soccer?
Well, again, on pay to play, that's a really good point. We do have to start to wrap this up for the length, but by having all these national championships and all these other leagues, you could probably do the math, at least in the top 40% of the travel, what we call travel soccer. It's doubling the overall amount of money spent. And I'll just quickly run down this because I've been in this world before. The typical total cost of participation to be in, I'll just use real world example of the DC market, where we have the luxury in the DC market of not having to get on the airplane for almost every game like you do if you're in Denver. Okay. And it's about $12,000 a year. If you add up the fees to the club and all of the travel, and that includes some of the travel of, mom or dad goes to the on the airplane as well, and all the other things that happen. But the less expensive markets, maybe less airline flights and and you can play maybe with scholarships and the parents don't go along, you can play in a DA or a top ECNL for less than that, maybe even half of that. But it's still, unless you're getting scholarship, it's a very real number. You go down to the next tier where you have these sort of sub-regional, regional leagues that don't maybe get on airplanes as much, so they have a few more games closer to home. The cost of renting a bus for 24 hours is usually $1,500 to $3,500. That gets maybe 2 teams at best just for one trip. So the next tier down, your total cost of participation is probably $5,000 at the top and $2,900, $3,000. When you multiply that number by multiple leagues that travel and play games across multiple states, whereas if that league didn't exist, then there would be so many fewer players that were playing closer to home, where the total cost of participation is $2,000 sub. So we talk about pay to play. Federation talks about pay to play, and yet I guess you could say the DA is their attempt to strip out the top players from everything to try to get everybody else to behave, quote unquote. But what's happening below that? What is happening? And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's the horizon is any better. Something's got to give from the business standpoint, unless the parents keep paying. And if they do, the cost is going to keep going up.
I think one thing just to mention as well is we do talk about, if you're playing this because you want to become a professional or you want to get a scholarship, you want to get in college, let's not forget that there are so many other reasons why kids play. I mean, maybe I was never going to make it as a college player. I certainly wasn't going to make it as a professional, but I still played travel soccer because I loved the lessons I learned. I loved the opportunities I got to go to see new places that I never would have gone to before. And I loved the friendships that I made. So there are so many reasons that it's worthwhile to play. So I think that it's good that the leagues are there. And like you said, having more leagues in some cases brings down the cost, but it's just kind of trying to figure out what that landscape is. And right now, as you guys have said, it is absolutely way too muddled. Quinn, Chris, Bridget, thank you guys so much. I want to wish you guys and I want to wish everybody listening a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope you all have a wonderful Turkey Day and long weekend as well. To all of us from SoccerWire, to your families back at home, happy Thanksgiving.